Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning. I am recording everywhere, I believe. It should be good to go. We're going to start off bright and early this morning. We have us a wizard up on the stage. I've done something a little different to the video feed. I've added the reference photo to every scene. Let me know if you find that distracting. I can't tell if I like it yet or not. It seems like it's a bit much at times. But here we go. Got this safari wizard here on the stage. Let's get some placement going so we know that he's going to fit on the paper. It's Saturday. My wife and kids were supposed to be gone camping, but we had some inclement weather, and so they stayed just in case there were tornadoes and flooding. That looks like it's going to fit just fine, because then the shadow comes out over to here, over to here. I think that's going to fit just fine. So here we are. They're still upstairs getting ready. Now they're upstairs getting ready to leave. They may walk in on us before we get out of here, and then you guys will get a chance to see Subliminal Baby. He's 15 now, learning to drive. I spent some time on the rabbit hole this morning. The Spanish word of the day is mago, which is Spanish for wizard or mage. But I spent some time down the rabbit hole learning about historical wizards versus fantasy fiction wizards versus sorcerers versus mages versus warlocks. And when I talk about historical wizards, you know, we're still talking fantasy fiction because we're talking Merlin. So you're not talking. It's not like there's some real wizard class out there. I'm not suggesting that there's some real Harry Potter school. I know that upsets some people. I'm not suggesting that. Yes, I'm recording, Mother. Thank you. I'm not suggesting that that's what is out there when I say historical wizards. I'm talking about historical depictions of, like, Merlin. And the funny thing about Merlin, we have the Tolkien wizards in the movies and in the cartoons. The Tolkien wizards wearing long flowing robes and pointy hats, tall pointy hats with great big wide brims. But Tolkien actually described Gandalf as having eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his hat. So either Gandalf in the book had some tremendously large eyebrows, or his hat didn't stick out nearly as far as they made it appear in the movie. And again, there are nerds that will argue, I mean, get into fisticuffs about this kind of stuff. I am not one of those. I am the one that sits over to the side and says, yeah, but what about this? Just to watch the nerds fight. My son is heavily into Dungeons and Dragons. He loves the game Dungeons and Dragons, And so he's one of the nerds I'm talking about. If I were to ask him what class this was, whether this was a wizard or a mage, he would, a wizard or a sorcerer, he would probably tell me it's a sorcerer because he's not wearing a pointy hat. Is that music loud? It seems loud. It seems loud to me today. It's possible that it just seems loud because I've been walking through this super quiet house all day, all morning. I've been up since 3. So it's possible it's just loud to me because the house is so quiet. But this wizard is wearing a metal plate hat. Yeah, Mom says it's louder than normal too. Let me see if I can adjust the volume over here. Tell me if that made a difference. We just want nuance. We don't really want to be blasted by the music. Ultimately I'm gonna have to download the music and put it on a playlist locally because I don't seem to have much control over it on the web server, and I don't want to be distracted by the music. I want the music to be something that adds value, not something that distracts us. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, that this would be a sorcerer, not a wizard, because he's wearing a metal skull cap and not a big pointy cap. So then I go down the rabbit hole. Where did the big pointy hats come from? Turns out some of the earliest depictions of Merlin back in the 1200s show him wearing a pointy hat. But it's a small pointy hat. And the pointy hat that Merlin was wearing is reminiscent of the hat that the Jewish scholars wore in 12th century Europe, 12th century England. So the big pointy hat and the long flowing robes are what scholars would wear, and so it's what was attributed to Merlin, because Merlin, being a wizard, would be a scholar. Wizards study to learn magic versus sorcerers that are born with magic, and warlocks that make pacts with Satan for magic. See what I mean? It's a rabbit hole. This is all nerd stuff. Very blurry. Huh. I wonder which camera is that? Is that this? That is this camera over here. That's this camera. Is it blurry there too? I wonder if it's because this light is too bright. Nope. It's just blurry. Is that any better? You won't know till it gets back to that camera. But we can't have it in the dark. So it might have just been that the spot was too spotty. That the spotlight was too spotty. Anyway. Versus warlocks that make pacts with Satan to have magic powers. So like I said, it's all very convoluted. And it's, I mean, who's more nerdy? The nerd that does it or the nerd that goes down the rabbit hole all day long? This camera is blurry. Oh, it's because there's something on the lens. Alright, let's see if that cleans it up. We'll have to wait till it comes back around cycle. I probably just messed the whole thing up. I probably just messed the whole thing up. We'll see. This is all stuff I need to work on. This is all stuff that we didn't have a problem with before, now we're having a problem with. So why is it suddenly a problem? Brett says I need a better camera. 720 ain't doing it. Thanks, Brett. You know, the problem is if I look at the past recordings, Brett, today's recording is blurrier than yesterday's recording, and the only thing that changed was I did some zoom. I zoomed in a little closer on some of the images so that I could make room for that reference photo on the side and still get stuff. So it may just be that I've messed up the zoom and messed up the focus because of it. So if we can tolerate it today, I appreciate your input though, Brett. If we can tolerate it today, hopefully I'll work on it. I'll work on it this morning, and I'll try to make sure that it's not a problem going forward. Moses is a wizard. He controls the camera. Well, there's Ron Johnson. Hi, Ron. Moses is a wizard. He controls the camera. We just about have this part knocked out, the composition part, and now we're doing the detail work, and then we'll come through and we'll take out all of the extra lines. There's a process. Yeah, if we can tolerate it today, I'm pretty sure that it's because I changed the focus last night. This should be closer to the body for sure. Let's clean up some of these lines before I start shading stuff that shouldn't be there. Because that happens. You know, you've got stray lines when you put a marker in place, but you come back later and that marker is not where you're actually working. But you forget that you're not working on that marker, and so you end up shading it. So yeah, there, that'll help. Okay. I think we're ready to start adding some shading in. So let's start by adding some form. It looks like I'm scribbling back and forth. I'm not scribbling back and forth. I am actually making kind of a loop with my pencil. Of course you can't tell because it's blurry, but I'm actually making kind of a loop with my pencil so that all of the lines are going the same direction right now. That gives me the starting point to control everything, to make sure everything goes exactly where or as close to where I want it to go, as instead of just random scribbles back and forth. But this is a wizard because Safari, the toy maker that makes this toy, labeled it a wizard on the bottom. I took a picture and blew it up real big so I could see to make sure, because I was like, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, you know, it looks more like a sorcerer than a wizard. But it does look just like Merlin from the movie Excalibur. So there's that. Do. My pencil lead. Yeah, my pencil lead's out. And that's a whole new thing for me, going through that much pencil lead. Speaking of which, we're about down to the last 3 weeks of this sketchbook, and it's time to decide what we're going to do next. If we're going to continue with pencil, if we're going to move to charcoal, if we're going to move to ink, or maybe watercolor sketches in the morning. I don't really want to go to acrylic. That's too much setup and cleanup. But I'm willing to let the chat vote. I'm almost out of these sketchbooks, and honestly, this has been a fun sketchbook, but I don't really like the texture. I feel like the texture doesn't blend well. so it's been a struggle. Hasn't really stopped me. Still feel like I have some stray lines there that need to be cleaned up. Like right there and there. I want to make sure and preserve the white of the paper underneath there so that you can distinguish where the shadows are going to be. Alright. So I think we have the basics in here. What's going on here? What did I think was going on here? Beard. Now I can scumble a little bit. Nose, eye, ear, helmet, all right. Now let's do the drop shadow. This is mainly just to get a separation from the paper, just to make sure I know where one thing begins, one thing ends, before I start adding form shadows. And then you squint, you can see the, if I squint, that purple is just a little darker than that shadow. But does that make sense without tint? And I'm not sure it does. I'm not convinced it makes sense without tint. But back to what we were talking about. You know, Merlin was a wizard, and he's depicted with a pointy hat, except in Excalibur. Gandalf has a pointy hat. But not in the book. This is darker than the shadow. But not in the book. Gandalf's hat was not pointy in the book, and his brim of the hat, his eyebrows stuck out past the brim of his hat. Now I have to base that off what the Reddit users and what Wikipedia said, because quite honestly, and I know this is blasphemy, I hated reading The Hobbit. I hated reading The Hobbit. I hated reading The Lord of the Rings. I hated reading it. Hated with a passion. And I know that's blasphemy with the fantasy, with my fantasy crowd. And I'm really not trying to start any wars. I just think that Tolkien told stories badly. Tolkien would tell a story about the wedding, for instance. We're going to go to this wedding, and here at this wedding, you remember the wedding, it was Sarah's wedding. Sarah was getting married over at the park. That park where we saw those birds, you remember where we saw those birds? What was that one bird? That one bird was it was a bird of paradise. Oh, they have those flowers that look like those birds. I think those are lovely flowers. I think they sell those flowers over at that shop next to the mall there, where they have the dresses that Sarah wore at her wedding. You remember Sarah at the wedding? God. Now I have 5 side quests to this story. And I didn't want to know all that. I just wanted to know what Gandalf said. Anyway, that's why I think that Tolkien was a bad storyteller. He told good stories badly. That arm, from where I'm sitting, should not be that far out. Actually, it's not that it's that far out. Is it? What's wrong with it? It's going the wrong way. It should be going this way. We're about done. 5:58. We're about finished. We're just going to clean up these extra lines now. I'm going to add some highlights back in. And then I'm going to try to figure out why my cameras are blurry all of a sudden. Because that is quite annoying. We got a big highlight right here. We have a highlight here. We have some highlights down here. Because it's plastic. It's not an actual robe. It is plastic. His skin is not white. His helmet is just a little darker than his skin, and everything else should be darker than his helmet. That highlight is light, but it is not white. But I think I'm calling it. What is today? Today's the 3rd. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I've gotten to where I really look forward to this every day. Just a moment of peace. Just some chatty friends on the internet sketching something. Let's see if I can get a photograph that does it justice. Alright, and then we'll blow that up. We're gonna stop that, and you should be able to see that there. So I mean, it's just a fun little sketch. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and have a great day.